So round 3 of the Rugby Championship is now over. We have our winners. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a blue shirt, it's because I have just finished doing the review video for the New Zealand versus Argentina game. So make sure you go check that one out after this one is finished. So, Australia versus South Africa. What a game this was set out to be, and what a final score. The winners going eventually to the Wallabies. Now, this game went through an awful lot of big switch-ups. I got this one wrong again, as I have done through most of them in my preview videos. I'm getting them all wrong. Australia keeping that track record of wins against South Africa at home on track. It's looking really good. So as we do in these review videos, of course, we'll start off by going through the first half, some of the scores, the highlights, thoughts on the game, and then we'll do the same for the second half. And as always, I'll ask, make sure you guys do drop down your thoughts on the game down in the comments. Don't take it out on the channel because of the result if you weren't happy. It's not my fault. But put your thoughts on the game down in the comments, because it's an awful lot of fun to see what you guys did think of the game. So going into this one, starting off in this first half then, Australia with an absolutely solid first 10 minutes. The performance we saw against Argentina last week just left so much to be desired. They've come away, they've had 2 weeks off, I'm going to keep saying last week, and they managed to come back and have a real bounce back. The first 10 minutes of this game, all Australia, including the first try of the game coming in the first minute, coming in from McWright. Now, as I said in the preview video for this game, I actually thought McWright was struggling last week. He was just playing this single-man army, not being a team player, just going off on his own, getting penalty jackals against him constantly. Work as a team, and I think it could be really valuable. This game changed it completely, gone completely to be the team mentality. He is the support runner. He is helping everyone else do the work and got rewarded with a try. There was a nice carry through the forwards. Dominant carries from Australia with every single pickup. They really wanted to hit this game off to a good start. Eventually, Samu made a big run down that right wing. Fantastic run from him. Eventually, they go for the crash ball, and it ends up being McWright is the one who goes over for that try. Successful conversion from Lolasio, who also had a really good game this game. I was quite impressed by Lolasio in this one, to be fair. So it takes them to 7-0, 1 minute into the game. What a hard thing to come back for the Springboks. This got doubled down as well, with Lolasio getting a penalty a little bit later on. There was a high tackle against himself, and it was a pretty easy 3 points in front of the post for him. So 10 minutes in, it's 10-0 to Australia. And in all honesty, for this first 10 minutes, I'd love to have known what the percentage stats were for the first 10 minutes, because if Australia had less than 90%, I'd be genuinely surprised. They had the ball constantly for this first 10 minutes, and it really looked like if the game was going to continue that way, Australia would begin to run this one over. It's not really how it went, though. So at the end of the first 10 minutes, I said it was all Australia. I know what I actually wrote down here, as I said, first 10 minutes, all Australia, so much better than when they were playing against Argentina. South Africa not really helping themselves at this point either. Every time they're getting turnovers, they just immediately kick it. First option they do is just kick it back to them. Really strange. You just think they want to hold on. The first line out didn't go very well. It was thrown not straight. Dweber, still struggling to get in there. He did pick up an injury himself in the 11th minute, so Marks actually came on really early and settled that ship down from the 11-minute marker onwards. In fact, for the rest of the first half, South Africa began to settle their game down a little bit. They did have the opportunities from points. There were some missed kicks from Pollard, one in the 14th minute. This was Australia jumping across in the lineup. Pollard missed that one. There was one a little bit later on, which he also missed as well. You know, Pollard's been pretty good for kicking ratio, so it's a bit of a surprise to see him miss those 2 kicks, but that could have brought them back to like 10-6 at this point. Unfortunately, not getting it there. Eventually, in the 22nd minute, we do see Pollard managing to get his first kick. This was from a crossing from Nick White. There was... we see it every game. It tends to happen in these sort of games. Crossing over from Nick White, gave a penalty, got the 3. So at this point, they go 10-3 down. But it could have been 10-9. You know, if you get those kicks, as we see now, if you go and watch the Argentina game, getting those kicks is vital to see able to win in these games. So, you know, really, really important for them. For the next sort of 20 minutes or so, there's an awful lot of penalties going the way of South Africa, actually. They just had compound errors coming in from Australia. South Africa weren't really working their way up the field, I wouldn't say at this point. I feel like the more ground they were gaining was due to these penalties coming in from Australia. Eventually, there was another penalty at the scrum, then a penalty for not being 10 metres. This scrum came on the 5-metre line of Australia. It went to ground, went for the quick tap, and Tom Wright decided just to tackle the dude who went for the quick tap. Can't do that. That's not a rule. So Tom Wright sees himself get a yellow card just before that sort of half-hour marker. There was another scrum, and Australia actually managed to win that scrum. A huge turnaround, and they survived a good 8 minutes of just like bombarding attack from South Africa. So Australia will be really proud of their defence in that. So they had 8 minutes of constant pressure and didn't concede a single point. A couple of times in there I did think that maybe South Africa should have looked to go for the kick to corner. Since Marks had come on, scrums and lineouts improved dramatically. I would have liked to see them maybe go for the driving maul or just take in the 3 and just chipped away, make the most of that yellow card. Didn't really work that way. They burnt a good sort of 5 minutes of Tom Wright's yellow card just waiting within that scrum section and not really managing to make any points of it. South Africa were desperate to try and get some points. Eventually they do manage to try and spread it a bit wide. We did see an unbelievable tackle coming in. The ball spread wide. Mapimpi looked for all graces he was going to get into that corner. We see Betty running across like a missile and just taking him out into the corner. I'm not even 100% sure if it was a legal tackle. I feel like Mapimpi actually jumped into the tackle and Betty didn't really go with both arms, sort of got him on the shoulder, but then Mapimpi jumping in the air sort of negated a bit. So amazing try-saving tackle from him. I'm still not sure if 100% legal, but looked absolutely fantastic on screen. Just before the half-time marker, you really thought they were going to get there. Australia are surviving and surviving. You think that's going to be the end of the first half. However, it did have a big shift at this point. Now, this was something I'm waiting for someone to talk about in the comments. Faf de Klerk getting a yellow card for striking Nick White in the face, which I think might be officially the softest yellow card ever given in rugby. I can't believe this was a yellow card given at the back of the scrum. Nick White had the ball in his hands getting ready to pass. Faf de Klerk was waiting to do a little slap the ball out of his hands as he went for the pass. We see it every week in some game of rugby or another. He saw him sort of go for a dummy one. He thought Nick White was going to pick up the ball. Nick White saw him go for the dummy, clearly realised he was going to do it, picked up the ball, put the ball like under his own chest and leant forwards. So basically the only thing this hit was going to strike ended up being Nick White's chin. They play on for about 2 seconds and Nick White falls to the ground. A very football-esque, to quote Nigel Owens, this is not soccer. I mean, oh man, that's awful. I hate when rugby players do that. I know, all right, fair enough, you got clocked in the chin, but like, you get clocked in the chin from almost anything in a game of rugby. It's absolutely constant. No need to throw yourself on the ground. So I don't really like any of that sort of thing. So it was looked at by the referee. They went over and they did actually rule it as, the wording was, you have actually, closed fist, you've struck him on the chin. It's a yellow card, even though the referee knew what he was going for, apparently. I really disagree with this sort of penalty. I think that opens the floodgate to be all sorts of things. An unintentional collision from hand to head, I don't think should ever warrant a yellow card. Maybe you'd give a penalty. Maybe you would. He did clock him on the chin, so maybe you give something. Personally, for me, I would have just liked to have seen free kick, shake hand, warning, move on. Maybe a penalty if it was good. A yellow card felt incredibly harsh for what that was, considering a little bit earlier on as well, South Africa were actually on their own attack, and we saw Fainga go in at the side of a maul, which literally stopped a try. I felt the try was coming and he went in at the side of the maul, completely disrupted it, and that wasn't a yellow card. I think that might have been the wrong call for this one. So we go into half time, 10-3 Australia. Both teams still got their yellow card ever so slightly. Tom Wright's about to come on very early in that second half. And just to show how this game was actually switched up, the percentage for the final 10 minutes of the game was 87% to South Africa. So from that starting 10 minutes we basically had the starting 10 minutes for Australia. We had right at the end of the final 10 minutes for South Africa. As I've written down on a note here, I did say the momentum switched massively. We did see that Australia had that first 10 minutes. It began to shift between 10 and 20 minutes. No one really dictating that. But then the final 20 was just all South Africa, but they just can't get this final 5% correctly. Every time they got up to the try, we did see Ox and Che get over the try line but got held up. We saw about 3 or 4 knock-ons right on the 5 metre, not getting their scrum, having the scrum go against them, not having the line-outs go exactly how they want to. They just cannot get this ball over for the try. They just need to get that final bit synergised down. The Australian defence is throwing everything at it. Betty, immense, literally underline that one. I thought he had a fantastic game. And as a note, I said I think they just need Malcolm Marks back on. By this time, Joseph Dweba had come back on from his injury, but I just thought you need to get Malcolm Marks back in to try and sort this out. The line out and scrum fixed so much as soon as he came on. So in terms of the final stats for the first half, possession 39 to Australia, 61 to South Africa. Massive, massive switch that we see from that final 20 minutes. Penalties conceded 10 to Australia, 5 to South Africa. So a lot more penalties going the way of Australia, but South Africa not converting it to points. Turnovers 7-6 to Australia, and then finally line-out succession. 57% in this first half for Australia, so really not going well for them in the line-outs. 83 for South Africa, so South Africa really getting involved in that line-out situation pretty well. In terms of the second half, then, Tom Wright came on very early. They conceded no points through his entire yellow card. That is what every coach wants to see from a yellow card, so really well done to Australia there. And to be honest, for the next, I don't even know, 25 minutes, you're only really going to be talking about Australia. They went back on it. Although South Africa tried to get off on a strong foot in the second half, it really felt like an awful lot of this was going the way of Australia. Even when they were on the defensive, they had the opportunity for counter-attack so many times. The first try of the second half coming from Corio Betty, not only having a good game in defence, but also being good on attack. Tom Wright making a huge break on the right wing. Australia managed to spread it wide the other way, making the man overlap. It was a lovely little step, cut back inside of Pollard, got himself over for the try. Conversion was missed, but at this point they're now 15-3 in the lead, that lead beginning to extend. South Africa are just struggling to make meters. They keep reverting back to this kicking game. Now, in the first half, the kicking game was actually working for them. They were winning some area battles. They were making ground. This second half didn't really go that way for them, and it didn't really look like they had a plan B for a lot of this game. They were doing this kicking thing. They had the wind against them. The kicks also weren't making as much ground. Australia managed to work out what they were doing. They sorted out that area battle a little bit. And after that, it felt like South Africa were just left with doing one-off passes and hoping someone did something. It didn't really feel organised. It didn't feel structured to actually, become something. Eventually, there was another try for McWright. 2 in one day. Nice to see from him. Getting a fabulous try. A set play coming in. WALLABIES on a fantastic line. Cutting back inside. Carves through the middle. Gets a little pass out the back. Risky, but absolutely fine if it works. Got the offload to McWright, who scores just under or just outside the post, but basically underneath. Nice, easy kick for WALLABIES. So we see in the 60th minute, Australia are actually ahead 22 points to 3 and absolutely running away from this at this point. They've got full momentum behind them. The Australia players are smiling. They look like they're beginning to have fun with the game. It's opening up a little bit. They're trying these more expansive things. It's working really well for them. The penalties keep coming. There was a penalty against Yantes for not rolling away. He'd literally been on the field for like 30 seconds. This lad just does not help himself in their own press of getting on in the game, just immediately being the issue. Australia got that kick as well, so it took them to 25 points to 3, 17 minutes left in the game. And the penalties are just beginning to add up. South Africa now, in the final 10 minutes, do actually manage to salvage some points. And if you're a South Africa fan, I feel like you're going to be praising Kwagga Smith an awful lot from this game. Kwagga Smith scoring 2 tries in the space of 5 minutes there. The first one, Australia had a man overlap, but decided not to go with it. There was an awful lot of Paisami trying to just sort of run through the middle as opposed to spreading it wide. Didn't go for it. Did manage to get the turnover. There's a nice break from Vincent Koch. Manages to run through. Gets the offload out to Smith, who manages to get over for the try. Conversion for that one did come in from Yanti. So they pulled it back by a nice 7 there. And it wasn't that much later where we got to see these penalties beginning to impact Australia now. The momentum going against them. Players getting tired. It was always going to come. Eventually, Valetini did get his own yellow card. Just being on the end of the team infringement penalty. He was the last one. Someone was going to go. Ended up being Valetini. South Africa got on some good breaks right at the end of the game. I don't know where they were for this rest of the second half, but there was a nice little break. They made 90 metres up the field, got all the way up to the Australia try line. Eventually, the try did come in again from Kwagga Smith. There was a penalty because of the yellow card. Went for the tap and go, and Kwagga Smith, I don't even know, like some sort of ninja turtle, just sort of got in and flipped over and got himself over the try line. Don't even know how he got there, but he did manage to get there. And then it was actually Hendrickse who actually got a nice cheeky drop goal conversion just to try and seal it out. So the final score at full time was 25-17. And to be honest, I think if you're South Africa, you're very happy it was even that close. This game really could have ended. It could have ended in so many different ways. This game could have ended 25-3. I genuinely reckon if that defence had just held out for that final 5 minutes, you'd be seeing an immense score here, and it would look really, really bad. South Africa also had points, though, where they could have scored far more points. We saw Oxenche get over the line. There was a couple of series where Players were right on the try line, would knock the ball on. They had kicking opportunities missed. They could have had another 6 points from Parlard's boots. Had they just not gone for the scrums, had they actually gone for some kicking from the boot to Pollard as well, they might have been able to pull that a little bit closer. So it could have gone the way of South Africa, but I feel like after the 75th minute, you definitely felt like Australia could have won this one by more. Final possession, 47-53, going the way of South Africa, so they just dropped that percentage points back down. You saw how much Australia must have had advantage in that second half in terms of getting that possession back. Turnovers 13-10. Some of the turnovers coming in this game really just breaking down that South African attack. And then finally, the penalties conceded 16-9. I think there's an argument made for whether there should have actually been another yellow card. I think the driving maul should have been another yellow card for Australia. Not sure how that would have switched up the game, but potentially could have had an impact. So in terms of final notes, and Wallabies maintain their home winning record against South Africa. Again, something I'm learning from watching this series. Apparently they've got a superb winning record. The last sort of 5-6 games they've won, all of them against South Africa. So nice to see they keep that record going. That's when you want to try and hold on to. South Africa looked defeated after 50 minutes. They really did. 50 to 75 minutes. They just looked tired. They looked shapeless. I'm not really sure what was going on with them. They just looked like after the kicking game failed, they lost what the plan B was. How are we going to recover from here? And until you had Quagga Smith coming on running the game for them, unfortunately not going that way. Corio-Betty was immense. I gave him my man of the match. Again, Sky coverage in the UK is pretty rubbish for saying who is man of the match, unfortunately. So I gave Corio-Betty my man of the match, but I'm sure a couple of people might actually go for McGrath getting the 2 tries, but I thought Corio-Betty was just everywhere. He was just absolutely brilliant. And then moving on to the next week's game, I think things to work on. Australia just need to cut down on the amount of penalties. The only reason in this game South Africa were even getting near that try line was because Australia giving away penalties, allowing them to move up the field. And South Africa just need to work on that final 5%. You've got to get those kicks over. You've got to be getting the try over the line and not having these knock-ons 2 meters from the try line and stuff. You've just got to go through the phases. There's an awful lot as well I've seen of South Africa players going themselves as opposed to using the team. There wasn't a great deal of like set plays going on. There wasn't really a lot of expansive passing. It felt like more one-off players trying to do something crazy and maybe get a weird offload. They're just going to want to work on that before next week. Really looking to see the replay of this game next week. But yeah, I think it was a really, really fun game. So let me know what you thought down in the comments. Like I said, we've already done the review video for the New Zealand and Argentina game, so you can go check that one out after this. And make sure you are sticking around on Monday, because on Monday, of course, we'll be doing the world rankings video that will come out very, very soon. So looking forward to that, because there'll probably be some big shifts up because of this weekend. But I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.